Now we have audio, yeah? Hey, welcome to John Park's workshop. It's me, John Park. Here we are for Adafruit Industries. And it's the moment I've been waiting for. Maybe it's the moment you've been waiting for too. I'm excited about the show today. Just checking in on the chat over in Discord and YouTube. Hello, everybody. Hey, C. Grover. Hey, is your skies. Looks like Tex on the Beach just got the link to the show, so excellent. And it looks like our levels are good. Our audio levels are good. All right. And so, well, with no further ado, let's get going because I've got a lot I want to cover. I want to do some live building to show you a pretty cool technique for the project of the week, which is milk jug glow skulls. And so let's get to it. So let's see. We have audio now. Good. Yeah, I was trying to do something clever there and mix in the music source and the mic source on the machine before it even gets to my mixer because one of those sources is on the computer itself. I'm using a thing called VCV Rack. It's a modular synthesizer, but a digital simulation of one, but set up just like a Eurorack synthesizer. So that song I was playing, that was sort of a generative thing, a little patch I put together, and I thought I could mix my audio into it, but it didn't work. So here I am just slapping it back over to voice directly. All right, I'm gonna save that thing and quit it, because I'm not sure, but I think this rack program uses quite a bit of CPU. So that means I won't be able to play us out. Oh well. Maybe I'll open it back up. So hey, before we go any further, let's start out with our coupon code for the week. So the coupon code this week is Melty Face. And you'll see why in a minute, but the coupon code will get you 10% off in the Adafruit store. And that's good on everything and anything other than gift certificates, subscriptions, and software. So you might want to load up on some stuff. Today's project is going to use a Hallowing, which is a Feather M0 Express-based board. I've been using it a lot lately on projects. It's super, super cool. It's been out of stock, so what I recommend is if you're interested in getting one, just fill in the little Notify Me button that you'll see on the store if you go to the Hallowing. And that way it'll send you an email when they come back in stock. And we usually do batches of 500, 200 to 500 of these kinds of things in the early days of the release of the project. So if you get that email, there's a good chance that you can run over and get yourself one. So Stuff with Kirby asks about milk jugs, hoping they were well rinsed out before I start heating them up. Yeah, that would stink, huh? I actually have a little secret to share with you about that. If I don't tell you the little secret about the milk jugs when we get there, remind me, okay? All right, well, hey, let's move on to the product of the week. So the product of the week this week is, let's switch over to this camera. It's this little guy. This is the Snake Eyes Bonnet. We also call it the animated eyes bonnet for Raspberry Pi. And the actual product I'm recommending is this one. It's the Animated Eyes Bonnet for our Pi pack. And what I did was I put together a little project using it here. So this is a set of eyes, and I have a joystick. You can see right there. I move my little joystick, and it causes the eyes to look around. And when I press the joystick, I get a little blink. And I also put a little potentiometer back here to deal with the pupil dilation, which is kind of menacing. I think that typically when creepy creatures get super angry, their pupils go tiny. That's what I've decided. So what I've got running this, there's a couple of displays with ribbon cables running to that same board I just showed you. And that board is a bonnet that sits right on top of the Raspberry Pi. I've got a Raspberry Pi 3B Plus. Is that a thing? I think that's the one. It's the latest one. So I'm powering it from a 2.5 amp 5-volt power supply. And then I've just kind of built it into this box to contain some of the parts here. Now it doesn't want to close. I've gotten something pinched. Oh. up in here I have a joystick mounted through. I just used a Forstner bit on a drill to cut a hole in the top to fit the joystick. And then I've mounted these. So actually the mounts that we have for our TT motors, they just happen to work pretty well for mounting these guys on here. So you could stick this behind your curtains for Halloween or behind a mask or something like that. It can run in autonomous mode. You've seen that probably with our Halloween eyeball that's just kind of looking around. But I wanted to be able to puppeteer one because I think that's a lot of fun. And so that wing, or rather that bonnet, this guy right here, that's what comes in this pack. So it's 2 TFT displays, all the ribbon cable you need to connect it to the bonnet, header pins for soldering onto things on both sides so they can plug into each other, and then you plug in your bonnet into a Raspberry Pi. So to go in autonomous mode, the only thing you'd need to add is a power supply and a Raspberry Pi. And an SD card. What I did on this one, actually, I followed Phil B's awesome instructions on building the Raspberry Pi-based Snake Eyes project. And I added in the pin numbers for using joystick and a sensor, analog sensor for the pupil dilation. And that can be a photo cell if you want to do it based on brightness and darkness. I decided to use that little pot switch. And then on Phil B's recommendation, I then used our guide on creating a read-only file system for Raspberry Pi. So basically, when you get the whole thing set up, you can then run a script that basically protects the Raspberry Pi from just being powered on and off with the power switch rather than a proper Linux shutdown. So this protects the file system, and then there's also a jumper that you can use if you want to make the file system write again so that you can go and change things like which eye pattern is on there, for example. So anyway, super cool project. It's the first time I've built one of these Raspberry Pi eye things, and this is the little guy that makes it very easy, and it's got rows for OLED displays and TFT displays. And then these little 3-pin inputs are what the joystick and other sensors can go into. So it's got 3-volt ground and an analog in. So super cool little bonnet that makes it easy to do your little eye projects. So that is the product of the week. And let's see. Well, I think, let me check the comments over in the chat. What's going on? Sorry for the late arrival. I didn't blow anything up, Mr. Certainly. Did you see this? I've never built one of these Raspberry Pi-based eye projects, but I've got a little joystick here for direction of gaze and press the joystick down for blink, and a little pot switch for dilation of the pupils. And it's a lot of fun. So I think I'm going to use that to scare people. I've got a good eye for it, eh? All right. Hey, what's going on over in YouTube? Someone asked about the printer. Yes, this is a Ultimaker 2, which I upgraded to the 2 Plus at one point, and then the display in there is just sitting there because I thought it looked cool on the glass. I'm not printing anything right now. Let's see. What else? Someone says, TFT displays have started to peel off their backings, including ones literally just received in the mail. Any suggestions for readhering? Oh, that's too bad. Well, you may want to either contact support at adafruit.com and see if they'll send you out some new ones. But if you don't mind just using some adhesive, I think some thin double-stick foam tape is a good bet. So let me know in the chat if anyone has other ideas on that. Motion tracking, someone asks. That's a great question. David Nemi asks about using motion tracking for this project. So something to look into if you're interested in motion tracking is OpenCV, which is Open Computer Vision. And I know we have a project running on a Raspberry Pi doing OpenCV. Hey, here comes a huge wasp. That Tony D created for a monitor. By the way, one of the fun things about this project is you can actually plug it into HDMI and get the big eyeballs on a screen as well if you've got a different purpose in mind for that project. So OpenCV and motion tracking. OpenCV's got some functions for tracking faces particularly well, but then I think you can also characterize other objects that you want to track. Ooh, John Shaftstall says, try double-stick carpet tape, very sticky and no foam. Yeah, I guess if you're trying to get it thin and you don't need the sort of compliance of the foam, then some double-stick tape will work well. All right, well, hey, let me get something set up here because you know what's coming. I think you know what's coming. And that is that's right. It's the Make Code Minute. And look, here's the Make Code. So for the Make Code Minute today, I just wanted to show the very most basic use of capacitive touch on the Circuit Playground Express inside of Make Code. So if you look at my Make Code session here, I have arrayed out, sort of in the shape of the board, in the shape of this circle, a bunch of these input blocks that are called on pin and then a pin number down. So this is like pressing a button, except all these do is they check the capacitive touch pads that run around the outside of the board to see if they've been touched or not. Now we can do fancy things like adjust their tolerance, but just in the default tolerance right now, all I need is to tell it what to do when I press it. What I did is I got a little fancy and I said when I press any of these, call a function, and that's this function over here on the side which says digital pin LED turns on, so that's the little indicator LED on the board. It plays a little beep, then it sets a pixel to yellow, so it clears the board basically to yellow. Then it turns off that little indicator LED, so all that happens, and then the kind of unique part is per pin, I set one of the pixels to red that's near the indicator. So if you take a look right now, I'm going to touch, you might hear that little beep. So there's 4 sensors on this side, and there's 3 on this side. And that is all it takes to use the capacitive touch pads as inputs on the Circuit Playground Express inside of Make Code. All right, Mr. Certainly, how's our time on that? If you're new joining us, if you haven't been here before, I am doing these Make Code minutes, and I'm trying to keep them to the Make Code 2 minutes, roughly, 2.5 minutes at most. So not a lot of time to go into details on this, obviously, but if you want a little more detail on this, let's see, we have a little bit of time, but I don't want to shirk our main project. I will show you when you're going out to work with the capacitive touch pads, we have under Input, it's actually this button click is what it looks like by default, and then you can go in and choose any of these pins, and that actually is going to check for the capacitive touches on those. Also, the reason I did down instead of up is I wanted to be able to sweep my finger across them, and rather than a click, which is a down-up, where you might miss some of them, this will trigger any of them whenever you touch them. So, pretty cool, and Make Code trying to shut him up. Is it shutting me up? Did I lose audio? No. Whew. You've got me paranoid. Now, you can also use alligator clip wires, copper tape, other conductive sort of antenna-like objects to do your capacitive touch. You've probably seen some of the projects that we've done with fruit. I've made a sequencer that used fruit. I've used conductive ink before. So, oh, Make Code was covering my mouth. Yeah, that new one I put in, wasn't it? So these are very powerful and not just onboard buttons. So I really dig how easy it is to get that set up inside of Make Code for using the capacitive touch on our lovely little Circuit Playground Express. All right, so let's see. We got about half the show left, and the Power Glove almost got me. It's right back there. Does everyone see? I got a little Power Glove back there. We're going to talk about the project of the week. So this is what I'm calling the Milk Jug Glow Skulls. And this is based on a comment I think Phil Terone, PT, Mr. Lady Ada, made. He had seen a video of someone creating duplicate skulls using this type of skull here as a form or base or mold, and then using a heat gun and high-density polyethylene, HDPE, bottles, which are these milk jugs, to melt the plastic down to the shape of the skull, and then some people use them as molds and they'll fill them with concrete. Some people will paper mache on top of them. What I realized when I made one is they're really great diffusers, so I wanted to use it as a glowing skull. So you know what I'm going to do? You may have seen this last night if you were on the show and tell. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to this camera, and I'm going to drop the aperture on this camera to darken it. And we'll see if that's enough to get a nice glow on the skull here. Let's plug it into power. So what I've got is a hollow wing that is running a strip of NeoPixels, a speaker, and this is a little different than the one I showed last night, actually. I updated the code, and a couple of red LEDs for eyes. So I'm going to plug this in. And turn it on. So you see I've got just the red LEDs glowing all the time for eyes. And then they're blinking between color changes and him screaming. And yeah, with the camera aperture, it looks pretty good, but I'll tell you, in the dark, it looks amazing. So I think we're going to build a few of these to put out for Halloween. I'll switch back my camera to where you can see the rest of the workshop. And that's pretty good. I don't want the frame rate to get too slow. One more notch. There we go. And so the... he thought it was a servo making the noise. Yeah, I'm not sure what that sounded like, but so what I've got on there is the little, let me show you in this camera real quick. There we go. So I've got my skull I made, and we're going to talk more about that in a second. I've stuffed it with one NeoPixel strip that's plugged into the little JST-PH NeoPixel port on the hollow wing. I've also plugged in a nice little speaker into the speaker port on the hollow wing. And then you can see I'm using pin 13 and ground to power these two LEDs. So that's all there is to it. The code is fairly straightforward. I'm just running a loop of cycling through different colors that I've chosen on the NeoPixels and cycling through some wave files that are on the board. So it's very straightforward. It's written in CircuitPython. And I'll be putting out a project for this tomorrow in the Learn Guide, in the Learn system, so you'll be able to follow along, download the files, etc. if you want to step your own. So let's talk about building this guy. First of all, I mentioned a trick. So the trick is this. I call it milk jug because that's fun to say, but I'm actually using water bottles because it's the same exact identical container. When you buy one, you can look at the store on the bottom and see that it says HDPE on the bottom. You might be able to see. There's no way you'll be able to see that, but trust me, it's kind of molded into there. They stamped in HDPE. And that way you're spending $1, I think this was 69 or 99 cents versus $4, $5 and up for milk. And you can probably water your plants with this if you need to empty them in a hurry, but I don't recommend you water your plants with milk. So that's what I'm using instead, and also it means cleanup is not necessary. I just pour the water out. I've been drinking that water, actually. And you don't have to clean out milk before you start heating things. Thank you for the reminder, Tex on the beach. That was the milk reminder. Okay, so let me switch over to this Workbench cam. I'm going to brighten that up one more notch. A couple more notches. Not too slow. Good. And let me show you how you build one of these. So what I've done is I built a sort of sculpting stand or armature stand out of some pipe and plywood. It makes this a lot easier. I took one of these $5 hardware store skulls, and this has a removable rotating jaw. You can leave that on. You might want to glue it down so it stays put. For my first skull, I did the full style. This one I'm going to do one of these partial skulls just for variety. And then what you do is you go in and cut off the handle and the top of the jug, so you're left with this. And as you'll notice, let me switch cameras here for you. There we go, and there we go. As you'll notice, the milk jug is actually shaped a lot like a skull, which maybe is how someone first thought of doing this. I don't know. And so once you've cut that off, you can slide this over your skull. And what I did was I cut a little hole out. You can either mount the pole all the way inside, or in this case, I cut a smaller hole, mounted it onto a black pipe clamp, and then hot glued it there. Hot glue is dicey because we're going to be heating it, so sometimes it melts off and you gotta re-secure it. So let's see. The best way to do this, I'm gonna do a front view of this for you, and let's try zooming that camera up a bit. There we go. So what I've got is some water and a sponge, and the idea here is that we're going to melt the the HDPE plastic until it becomes essentially transparent, and then it's in a really sort of molten state. And then we'll use the sponge to press it into the details on the skull. And since it's got the water, it'll help cool it quickly and not melt the sponge itself. So I'm using just a cheap hardware store heat gun, and I'm using it in the high heat mode, which I think on this one might be 1100 degrees. Yeah, 1100 degrees. So let's see, we'll do this eye socket and nose area. And if you keep an eye on that, you should see it go pretty clear. The nose is starting to go. You'll see it in the eye really well. And it's like a fog is being lifted from the plastic as it goes into this melty state. Okay, that's nice and hot. So I'm going to take the sponge and I'm just going to press it into shape. So you can see there I've got the eye socket pushed in. I'm actually trying to go a little gentler on the eye socket this time. On the last one I deformed it so much that it split the plastic a little bit. Let me show you this from this view. Oops. So you can see there that it's starting to suck into the form of that nicely. So let me just continue on with that. And I'm going to get this cheekbone over here. And what I did is, I'm no expert. This is like the third time I'm doing this, but what I did with this was got the general shape of it without worrying about details too much and going too deeply in, but got the broader features. And then you can go back and pick up some of the small details if you need them later. Let's get that part. Using, oh, let's get some, that's the wrong end of the sponge and it kind of stuck to the plastic. Using a little tool, you can go in and, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the top of this so that we kind of shrink the head down on top, and that'll help hold things in place. So I'm going to try to switch camera views while I do that. Let's see, how about that? Oh, I'm also going to multitask here and try to turn my chat back up on. There we go. Yeah, you could definitely leave it flat for a Frankenstein look. That's a good call. Bravo, Delta. Text on the beach, you could probably use any skull. This is actually a plastic skull, but it's thick enough that it's not being damaged or deformed by this. You could use a resin skull, some sort of other cast skull, a glass skull. I know there's a brand of vodka that comes in a skull bottle. That might be a fun one to form. So I've melted the bottom there. Oh, sorry, I've melted the top of that, rather. But I've got a big lump in the front just based on the milk bottle mold shape that I want to deal with here. So I'm going to set that, but not too tight on there. And now I'm going to heat up this front and press it forward and back. Forward and up on the skull. So let's get this sponge out. So I'm kind of pushing it up since it stretches a little bit to get that little lump up and out of there. Yeah, this guy's kind of got horns now, which is cool. Let's switch cameras. Let's see, he's getting some little horns there. So let's continue. We've just got a little bit of time left, but I'm going to try to press the face in again. And the nice thing is that you've got as many chances as you need to get some of this stuff right. You can reheat an area and go back. So I'm going to redo the eye socket here since I shifted things when I got the forehead in place. The biggest trick you'll find with these inexpensive heat guns is that they usually have a thermal fuse inside that'll get tripped if you run for too long. I don't know what the duty cycle is on this one, but if you keep it running for on and off like this for an hour, it may need a 15-minute break. There we go. That's kind of looking cool. Right in there. All right, let's keep that going. Let's get the face front. So I'm going to get the nose for you. And the mouth. Now on this one, since I removed the lower jaw, we've got a lot of excess plastic at the bottom that will fold under, and then we can trim it off. Oops. And you could also place objects on here on top of your skull, like little horns or something like that if you wanted to add to it. I also have a question about these milk jugs and water bottles, which is, what is the deal with this circle that they put in? There's always this circle molded in. I gotta assume it has something to do with stability or volume, getting the exact volume on it, but keeping the footprint a certain size for shelf space. I don't know, but they all have that. So that's what the process looks like. And what I'm gonna do is actually give you a little fast forward. I shot a little video. It's actually a time-lapse series of photos as I worked on the first one. And there we go. So here you see I'm cutting out the handle. This one, you can see I placed the skull all the way down on top. That hot glue did bust off at one point. And now through the magic of time-lapse, you'll see I get through this a lot faster. C. Grover asks about using a hot air rework station for fine details. You know what? I ended up using I used exactly that. I used my hot air rework station when I got impatient after the thermal fuse tripped on that heat gun. So I just had a little bit left to do. You'll see the last few steps I do are going to be with a rework gun. But yeah, you could definitely put a nozzle. I left it wide open, but you could put a small nozzle on it if you wanted to heat a finer area. It's a good idea. Ezra Sky says he thinks the milk bottle circles to help it from not exploding when you drop it. I see. The dents pop out. That makes a lot of sense. And then I heated the back to form. You may or may not need a back on it. I ended up leaving it on here, but if you're putting it up on a wall or something, you could trim the back. Going back in. Yeah, where I split the eye, I think there was a seam, like a part line. I think it was from that circle, actually. There was just like a... oh, there we go. So I'm splitting the skull out of the back there, and there she is. Yeah, and have a fire extinguisher in your workshop. I got one right behind the workbench there. So that's going to loop through again. So I hope that satisfies your curiosity about what it looks like to start making one of these skulls. You can see here we've started to get some nice beginnings of definition in there. You could also do some horrifying things like have faces coming out of walls just by cutting the original off and placing it on a piece of plywood before you start heat shrinking it onto there. Then, yes, you've seen, so I showed you the final here. All I did was dug out some holes and used these little LED holders to place those big 10mm LEDs in there. And that is how you make yourself a milk jug glow skull. And now you know the secret. It's actually, in most cases, a water jug because that's just a little bit easier. That is going to wrap up the project, and then just a couple other little details here. I've got to remind you of our coupon code MELTYFACE, which will get you 10% off in the store on anything that your heart desires other than gift certificates, subscriptions, and software. And don't forget about these snake eyes bonnets. If you're looking for a project, I think all the parts for that are available in the store right now. So that's a fun one if you're doing your Halloween stuff. I'm going to hang around in the chat for a little while longer after the show over in Discord. Look, if you're curious, let's see. Do I have a Discord window? I think I do. Look, there's the Discord right there. So if you're joining us on Facebook or Twitter Periscope or on YouTube and you want to keep the conversation going, head on over to our Discord channel, which I never remember the URL for, but I would say Google Discord and Adafruit and you'll find us. And in the live broadcast channel of our server, we have great discussions going on about the projects. And that'll do it. And I would love to discuss stuff that people are building for Halloween in the chat. So come on over and let's talk about what's going on. So for Adafruit Industries, I am John Park, and this has been John Park's Workshop. I'm going to try to get the music to play on the way out.